Councillor Mike Lee, seconded by Councillor Kathy Casey. This is a notice of motion. When I first received this, I reflected on whether or not it was something that I should accept as a part of this agenda, on the basis that the role for our memberships lies with the Chief Executive Officer, Stephen. But I then also recalled that we had a debate on exactly the same issue in 2013. The debate failed at that time, and on that basis, having set a precedent, whatever my view on the merits or otherwise of it, I felt that it was important therefore us to discuss this matter here today and to enable the discussion to occur. Now, as I said at the outset, I want to just enable Stephen and staff to put this in context in terms of what has been proposed, and then obviously start the debate with Councillor Mike and Councillor Kathy. But given the fact that we are here discussing or proposed discussion relating to Auckland Council's corporate membership in the Property Council of New Zealand, this is a matter that sits specifically within the purview of the Chief Executive Officer. It is a matter that therefore I want the Chief Executive Officer to reflect on firstly, to give us advice and to reflect back to us his views in terms of whether or not the issue is one that he as the Chief Executive Officer would consider in his role for determining the management of our corporate memberships generally, and I think you'll find there 250, give or take. So, look, councillors, I think that the fairest and best way to handle this matter is to give Steve the opportunity, as the person with the delegated authority here, to reflect on the matter, and then we can take the discussion from there.
Do you want me to move it first, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I've done that. It's moved in your name and Kathy's name. I've acknowledged that, so I'm happy for the matter to sit on the floor, moved by Councillor Mike Lee and seconded by Councillor Kathy Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We felt that it was imperative that we do take the time to give you the background to this matter, and also to have some independent advice for you about conflicts of interest, because clearly when the unitary plan comes back and with its recommendations from the Independence Hearings Panel, you'll be thinking about those matters. So we thought it was appropriate to give you a piece of comprehensive advice about the issues of conflict, so that you can reflect on them and ask both Meredith Connell and Catherine for further advice if you wish, or some interpretation of that advice. In respect of the corporate memberships, and contrary to the public input earlier today, there is no secret about who council is a member of, and we've furnished that list back in 2013. It was made public, and we've repeated it here for you, and the media are most welcome to have it. So the group, so the CCOs and the council, we are variously members of all sorts of organisations, and those decisions are made by the respective chief executive, or through, as often is the case, a delegation to a senior manager or a budget holder, who would be better placed to evaluate the benefit and cost of being a member of that particular organisation. You'll see from the schedule that some memberships are corporate, while others might pertain to an individual. And, you know, there are many on the list that might variously be described as including lobbying in their activities that they undertake. And Local Government New Zealand would be a prime example of that. And it would be at the top end of our membership subscriptions at some $400,000 plus, which is quite a bit less than the legacy councils used to pay to LGNZ as 8 separate organisations. So we are over the period of renewal. We have been actively looking at costs and benefits, and we have been with some organisations where their rules provide for it, if we can achieve a group membership rate rather than each CCO joining up, we have done that. And the Property Council is a good example of that. So the membership fee that will be calculated for us for the period April 2016 to March 2017, so it's an April to March financial year for the Property Council. The group fee will be $37,502 plus GST, and the apportionment of that is not yet calculated, and that will happen between the Property Council and the members. And this membership will cover Auckland Council, RFA, Auckland Transport and Panuku Development Auckland. The costs of membership of the Property Council have been trending downwards over the life of this council. It's a variable amount because we participate in training with the Property Council and we pay separate amounts for participating in training activities that we have an interest in and want to be part of.
That's excellent.
Might be useful to Your Worship to invite Meredith Connell and Catherine just to come and answer any questions about the advice that they've provided for you.
Okay, so the issue raised by the notice of motion, councillors, as Stephen has reflected on thus far, is the quite complicated issue of conflict, either legal or perceived. One is within a legal framework and the other is in the court of public opinion. And so Stephen has appropriately, given his role, asked for advice that not only talks about conflict generally, which is timely, but conflict specifically as it might apply to the concerns raised by Councillor Mike and Councillor Cathy. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you. With me I've got Anna Adams from Meredith Connell, who's prepared the advice that you've seen. In short point that I'll make before I hand over to Anna and any questions that you may have, the general proposition that comes through very strongly in the advice, and which is entirely consistent with the advice that the governing body received in 2013 when this issue arose, can be looked at in isolation of it being the Property Council or any other entity of which we have membership, is that the best way for elected members to immunise themselves from any concern of an allegation of bias and decision making is to adopt the orthodox approach that most entities do, where it's an administrative decision of the chief executive via delegated authority as to where corporate membership is to be held, and to leave the governing members of this entity, or whether they be directors of any other entity, free from those decisions so that they're not actively involved in that decision making.
Right. Anna, have you got anything to add?
Your Worship, thank you. The essence of Meredith Connell's advice is that the Council's institutional membership of the Property Council doesn't give rise to a legal conflict of interest for the governing body members in making the unitary plan decisions. And the reasons for this, in short, are that conflicts of interest are matters that affect decision makers, and the decision makers on the unitary plan are the governing body members as individuals, and the decisions obviously I'm referring to are those in July and August to accept or reject the hearings panel recommendations. The interests and memberships of the council as an institution are relevant as potential conflicts only to the extent that they can be attributed to governing body members or said to have a great influence on them. So, for example, if a councillor was prominent in the property council, say a vice president and who shaped the submissions, that might give rise to a concern. Or if a councillor politically endorsed something to do with the property council, that might give rise to a concern. But in general, the interests of the council as an institution don't give rise to conflicts for governing body members. And you can see why this is logical, because obviously the interests of council as an institution are vast. In the unitary plan, it's a promoter, it's a submitter, it's a landowner. And if all of those interests of council as an institution created conflicts of governing body members, it wouldn't be possible to take a decision. So in this case, we understand that the council's membership of the property council is institutional. It was decided by the chief executive. It's one of hundreds of organisations. There are no governing body members playing a key role in the property council, as we understand. And in that circumstance, our conclusion was that the membership of the property council cannot be attributed to the governing body members as any form of conflict. However, we have also looked in our advice, sort of springboarded off the notice of motion that's been put forward. And the concern that we raised in our advice is that if that notice of motion is passed, there is a potential for what you might call the opposite situation to develop, whereby councillors that voted to terminate the property council's membership on the grounds that the property council was a submitter to the unitary plan could later on in July and August, when the unitary plan decisions have been taken, expose themselves to the suggestion that they made that vote because they took a particular view of the property council submissions, you know, favourable, disfavourable, whatever it is. And that starts to give rise to a concern that there is an association between the property council's positions and the members of the governing body, and gives rise to the possibility of at least allegations of bias or predetermination or conflict. So it's for that reason that we advised the council that the most legally secure course is to allow membership of these kind of external organisations to rest with the chief executive, so that you retain the independence of the governing body members, the legal security that you have at the moment, and that you don't essentially muddy the waters by taking a political position on those organisations.
Okay, Anna. Well, look, Councillor Cathy, do you actually want to ask a question? Yep, sure.
Can I just make a point of order? I was emailed this legal advice by the Chief Executive's office earlier this week, and it was marked confidential and legally privileged, which is in ordinary English means secret. So it is now not confidential and not legally privileged, or how does it work now legally, this advice?
Go ahead.
Meredith Connell,
Yeah.
confidential and legally privileged.
The
It's
advice-
out now, is it?
Yep.
The advice is confidential and legally privileged. We are discussing it in an open forum which waives the privilege over that item, and I understand it has already been received by the media.
Yep.
Funny that. Funny that.
All good.
So it's no longer secret?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cathy.
Someone leaked it,
Nothing
it stopped being
really
secret.
secret.
Just a question, Anna, if I follow your reasoning correctly, anyone who votes for this notice of motion today can then be, claim come July, August that we have a conflict of interest. That's what you've just said.
Not necessarily. What we highlighted was that there was a risk of that occurring.
Challenge.
Just be clearer than that. This whole opinion here says that. It says the risk of supporting this is too great because there will be a legal risk with regard to conflict of interest. So surely today's vote you should be recommending is null and void for fear of currying favour.
What our legal advice is that the councillors and the governing body are in a legally secure position at the moment because they are not associated at all. None of you are associated with the positions of the property council. However, if councillors vote on a motion that appears to take a position on the positions of the property council, then you create a risk later on that you would be accused of viewing the property council submissions with favour or disfavour, and that is a risk of someone suggesting that you have predetermined your position on the property council submissions. That's our advice.
So your advice is clear that anybody voting in support of this study is being put at risk, is that what you're saying? Because that's what I
What
hear.
about the other way around?